Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of It's All Interventional. Now, today's guest is a big treat for me. I met Kate for the first time about 5 or 6 years ago. Now, Kate's had experience as a staff radiology, CT, and MRI tech. She's been a manager of a radiology department, as well as a director of radiology and cardiovascular services. Quick shout out to those of you, you know who you are. Just want to say hey, and I miss you guys. Anyway, today's episode is all about best practices. What are those things that make a department successful? So, Kate, thanks for taking your time with me today. I really appreciate it. My first question for you is, what are the top best practices? Whether it's something from a department level, manager, or staff perspective, what are those things that make a successful department?
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate being here today. For the top best practices, I really draw from some of my experience that I've had with really successful teams in the past. And really it all stemmed down to one main element that spawns off many, many different avenues from there. And it's the word trust. It comes in many forms. It comes from making sure that everyone has clear expectations and that they understand what the responses from others are going to be and that you can trust in that. It is open communication, that it is going to be well received with whatever feedback you give, and whatever feedback you get, it's going to be honest and objective and fair. It has to come back to a lot with those elements of empowerment, even for a team. When you're working with teams, especially interventional labs, the administrative leadership for that team is not going to be day-to-day hands-on within that space. It is the clinicians, it is the technical teams that are in that space, it's the nursing teams in that space that are really going to give you your outcomes that your whole department is aiming for on a day-to-day basis. And that requires them to know that they have the authority to act in the way that is best for the patient, that they are aiming for those best practices in clinical treatments, and that you will always, as their administrative partner in that department, have their backs on that. And if there is something that does not go according to plan and maybe does need a little tweaking, that is done in those very respectful communication spaces on the back end. And that feedback is given, again, fairly and in a very trusting environment.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I agree with you on those. Okay. So there's a lot of things that make a department, but you pick those as your top. Why? And I know you elaborated some already on that one. Why do you think those are the top things to make a department successful?
I think it's your base elements. It is your foundational pieces that you can build everything else off of. And I think that's why it's most important to me and the departments that I've been involved in the past, is if you have those base elements, you can build wonderful clinical programs. You can build great service lines off of that. You can build great patient experience off of that. But if you miss those key elements, you are never going to achieve those other things. They can't stand without that foundation.
That is so true. And, I think about my experiences in different hospitals where I've worked everywhere else. You're right. I mean, that's why you're doing this interview, because I agree 100%. So if you were going to hire a completely brand new interventional department, what are those things that you'd want to instill within them to make sure that department was successful?
Oh, wow. That's kind of a fun ask to be able to design it from the ground up. A whole new team. I think it would basically come down to a really clear vision. Where are we going? And even spend less time on where we are or where we've been. It's always good to use that as a touch point to know where you're starting from. I think a lot of departments that could be extremely successful fall short of that because they dwell in that where we've been or what we've done mentality too much. So I think that forward vision, where are we going, especially with a new team, that would be one of those critical pieces that I would make sure everyone is on the same page for. Because whether you are part of the physician team in that space, the technologists, the nursing team, if you're part of the supportive services from authorizations and clerical services, whatever that scope might be for that full department service, if everyone is not steering in the same direction, if not pulling those oars in the same way, your boat's going to spin, right? You need to be moving forward together. So I think that would be, without going into a whole lot of nitty-gritty detail, I think that would be the main focus to start from. And then any plans that we do to design the team and the functions and the processes within, as long as everyone is guided by that same vision, they all know what to aim for their end outcomes.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you had a really good comment in the beginning, and I'm going to rephrase it. We've always done it this way. Just because it has been done doesn't mean it needs to be done that way, although it could be great and should stay that way. But using the past as knowledge and experience to build for a better future. You had some really good comments on it. Thank you.
And I think part of that, what you just said there, is if the individuals have always had that past experience, if this is an existing department that's just looking for a new direction, it's okay to start from those points. But you also have to go back to that trust element and that ability to empower them to question why. Even if it's something that you land back at the same, you know what, we were doing this with best practice. We were doing this the best we possibly could. That's okay to land back at there, but make sure everyone is open and focused to look at what the vision says and then say, okay, this is what we were doing. Why? Does it align? Is it giving us our best option? Or are we missing something else we could do maybe a little differently and really take it to the next level?
Sure. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. What do you think the physician's role plays in the interventional departments for best practices?
I love this question because I had one of the best dyad partners ever for an IR department in the past. And he knows who he is, so we'll just do that same little nod. But that role was critical. And this department could not have been what it was without that physician leadership. He and I had a great understanding of where we wanted to go. We had a shared vision of where we wanted to go. And we both clearly understood that his role was that clinical guidance and expertise within the space and being able to reach out to physicians and get those interactions so that you can talk to other clinicians about what services IR can provide their patients that they may not be aware of.
Gotcha.
My objective on the backside was, how do I support you to do that? So I equate it very often to, he was the rudder on the ship. He really steered us, but I hung the sails.
Gotcha.
So I made sure that we had what we needed for resources. And that role, though, of the physician leadership is critical. He had this team, he brought in additional physicians with him, and they all got it. And they all were moving for the same direction. I will say one of the most impressive and effective best practices I saw them employ there was morning daily rounds. They had, like, you go to an OR anywhere, you go to a procedural center anywhere, they've got a big dry erase board somewhere, right? It's hanging on the wall. And you list out your schedule, and someone with really good handwriting on the team usually is up there and he's jotting down the times and the patient's name and what procedure they're doing. That became their script, their morning outline. And they did it every morning religiously. They never missed. The team got in there, they got changed. And then their first spot was to check in front of that board, and they all gathered and they had a set time that they kicked it off at, and they went through every procedure on that board. And the physicians were there if there was more than one that day, if they were cross covering or running multiple labs, they were all involved in the conversation. The whole staff was there, from the nursing team to the technologist team. Administrators came in and out occasionally. I was able to attend once in a while. It was kind of nice when they included me. But then they're also their clerical team. So who's on the phone with physician offices taking add-ons? What is the scope for the day? What does it look like? But they ran through every case from what's expected for that patient condition at that time, what's known then, what supplies they're going to need, what positioning they want, what is their expected outcome, is there any hiccups that they're anticipating? that whole team started that day,
Mhm.
everybody knowing the plan.
Wow.
And that was one of the most effective things that I have ever seen in an IR department. And it lent directly to their successes.
That's amazing. While you were talking, I was thinking of a timeout. Every procedure has a timeout. It's kind of like they had a department daily timeout. What's going to happen?
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
brilliant. Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm an IR or a cath lab team lead, what can I do for my director to make this department as successful as it can be?
Oh, good question. So my team leads for IR and cath lab, and I did have them both. I trusted them and I relied on them to be my eyes and ears.
Mm-hmm.
They were the first ones in the department in the morning. They were the ones checking things on the back end for charting, for billing, etc. They were the preceptors for new staff. They were ones watching for QA. These are the ones, the individuals who really see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Their role was not just to me, but because, as I identified before, these departments we ran as a dyad, myself and the clinician,
Mm-hmm.
they were the eyes and ears for both of us. And the clinician had more eyes on. Obviously, the physician was in the
Right.
room in these spaces.
Right.
But as far as coming back and saying, okay, this is what I'm seeing. We've got Sally who just started in. She's doing great, but I'm noticing that she's picking up Jake's bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that we're watching Jake's bad habits, but also course correcting for Sally. So small things like that about feedback for the team members, making sure they have what they need. Resources aren't coming through. We have supply chain issues. Who hasn't heard of supply chain issues lately? That is something that they were able to identify for us early. They knew what cases were coming up because of that morning timeout that they did as a department. Gotcha. They knew, okay, we are going to run through 4 of these devices today, and I have 5 on the shelf, and I've got more of these cases scheduled this week. We've got a problem with resources. So
Sure.
that element of really being an extra sensor for everything that's working or not working within the department, that's really what a team lead, a functional, strong team lead provides for their directors.
Gotcha. And that really just kind of falls back what you said at the very beginning of this interview was trust in communication. It all falls on those 2 foundational principles right there at the beginning. All right, so let's go back. Here I am. I'm a lead in the cath lab or a lead in the IR department. What can you as director do for me to help make our department more successful?
Well, I'm going to say that you can probably guess what I'm about to say next here, Scott. But as their director, the best thing I can do is listen. I need to hear what they're saying. I need to be able to figure out what support that team needs, whether it's the doctors, the techs, the nurses, whomever on the team, what the patients need, what the referring doctors need. Are we missing the boat on anything? And then my job is to take that feedback that you're giving me and see what I can do to remove obstacles so that we can continue to deliver the best care that you can within that lab space. My job is on the back end. I don't have the glamour of the scrubs and the bouffant caps inside the room. I am behind the scenes, and I am doing the budget paperwork and making sure the resources are there correctly. But if I don't do that with your input as my team lead, I don't deserve to be there for you. I need to make sure I'm listening to you.
Wow, that's really profound to hear that. I've at the facilities I've worked with several different department directors, and I have to admit, I never heard from any one of them, from any of the 3 hospitals I worked at, quite the design for success that you've delivered today. So
it's all key elements.
They truly are, and again, kudos to you and where you've been, where I've known about it. It showed for success.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
All right, Kate, thanks again. Super valuable information. I know we could just take this and go on for hours, probably on other specific points, but we might do that for a different video down the road. I hope we can get together again and maybe drill down deeper on some of these very important points.
Appreciate the time, Scott. This was a wonderful honor. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, there you have it, straight from Kate Eschbach. She's a director of radiology. She has experience in cath lab and radiology, IR, directorship, managership, staff levels. She's been through it all, and you saw that we got some great information. I hope this was beneficial to you. If you have any other input, any comments, things that you thought were best practices from where you're at, if you want to share those in the comments below, I'd really appreciate that. And let me know if you have other ideas. I might reach out to you and have an interview as well. So thanks again for joining. Please do like and subscribe. A lot of help to the channel when you do that information. Again, leave your comments if there's anything that you want to see reviewed or talked about, have interview about. Look forward to doing that with you guys. And if you have any questions regarding best practices, leave those in the comments below. We'll try to get back to you on those as well. So thanks again for your time. Look forward to seeing you again on It's All Interventional.